Greetings folks, your friendly neighborhood Rick Disgate here. In this video I want to discuss Phoneybeetlemaniacxs, Gary's video response to me, his response to my Jesus on Parole video. All the links will be below for everybody to check out if you wish. I'm not going to respond directly to your video, blah 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 blah, like that, but I made some notes. I watched it a few times. I made some notes about your point of view on what substitutionary atonement actually means, because I understand that you do have a different view on it than the typical, the contemporary fundamentalist kind of view of wages of sin, damnation, hell, and all this kind of stuff, which is fine, and I'm willing to discuss these things, more than willing. So, now in your view, substitutionary atonement, now excuse me, I tried to summarize these things as best I could. This is one way I assimilate, I figure out information is by rewording these things myself to see if I do understand things. So correct me if I'm wrong. So the substitutionary atonement is not like the courtroom example given. You say that it's more like Jesus is a helper, somebody who's there to give you a helping hand, to show you what not to do and what to do. You use the word social worker. Very interesting choice of words, I find. I've never heard that before, but what you say here is that if we were left to our own devices, we would be easily swayed by evil. And that's a whole other can of monkeys, if you want to say, right there, because I mean, just using that word evil just to refer to a whole set of human behaviors that are very complex and are either explainable or being explained or looked into in some way, shape, or form via the many sciences. So that would be a whole hangout of its own to talk about this concept of evil on its own. So let's ignore that. But we are easily swayed by this, so we can turn to the life of Jesus and his template, what he has put forward as the ideal life. And we can look to that and imitate that. And fine, yep, of course, that's pretty well ubiquitous across most, if not all, Christian denominations. At least that part of Jesus' life is true. That at least that interpretation of Jesus' life is true. He is the example to follow. But that's not what I'm talking about, substitutionary atonement. It might be a part of it, but it's not the whole substitution part of it, right? So you go on to say that substitutionary atonement is Jesus paying or paving the way to allow us to make mistakes, but still having a means of atoning for them. It is not a get out of jail free card, and it is not him taking the bail for you or paying bail for you or whatever. So what is it then if it's not? That's what substitute means to me. An atonement, you're atoning for sins, and the wages of sin is death, corporeal or spiritual, if you wish, ungoodness eternally. So there's a wage to be paid. Jesus stood in that place and paid that wage, but he didn't. But anyways, that to me is the crux of the substitutionary atonement thing. His life part, yeah, that's part of it, definitely, but it's a part we can agree on. But this whole other thing is something altogether different. So, Jesus did not die in order for us not to go to eternal ungoodness or whatever when we die, but he died so we can overcome them in real life and be forgiven for them. So we can follow his example, dying to ourselves and being resurrected spiritually into the life of the template of Jesus in a way, right? Which is interesting. Yeah, I agree with you on all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I agree with you. But where is this final atonement? There's no atoning. There's no actual paying of this wage out by Jesus. Jesus pays his wage. But anyways, let's continue. The redemption of mankind is more like a voucher system, you say, which is interesting. So the way I understand a voucher system, okay, and in this regard, we'll put it in the context of God and Jesus and us. So the voucher system. God is the holder of the voucher. He holds the voucher. We don't. We can redeem it in a way, but he holds the voucher. And the voucher is Jesus, which can be used to redeem mankind, because God is the only one who can provide that, right? So he is the voucher holder, and Jesus is the voucher. Now, the voucher is meant to redeem mankind from the wages of sin and death. Or sin, which is death. Spiritual or corporeal. So God uses his voucher. The death upon a cross is the use of the voucher. It is now being exchanged. Here's the exchange. The wages of sin have been paid in full, but why does God get the voucher back 3 days later? Vouchers are redeemable once, and let's say it's a redeemable by proxy for us. We can just say, yeah, God did that for us, so we can rely upon that voucher because that voucher clears us and we accept that. That makes sense, but the voucher's sitting right beside God again. He got it back in the mail 3 days later. That's the way I look at it. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's still no atoning for anything here. So, in my view of the salvation message, this is me talking now, which is that the wages of sin, being eternal ungoodness, whatever it might be, are death here, and then eternal ungoodness of whatever sort. Now, God provided a substitute for us, so we didn't have to suffer that, right? So our debt is paid in full. So if we accept it by the act of the cross, it's paid in full. So if we do not accept this, right, we do not accept this idea that Jesus is this pattern of life and all this kind of stuff, then we end our lives here, and then we go on to eternal ungoodness because we did not accept this. We did not say yay to it. Now, I understand that you say everybody's going to be redeemed in the end. I do believe. I do, whatever the term is for that, but I think that's your understanding of it, and that's fine. So I don't understand. This whole redemption message is just kind of crock to me then. But, okay, so if I do not accept this, I, upon death, will suffer ungoodness for all my mistakes and da-da-da. But, because a Christian, if they can rely upon the cross as paying the wages for their sin, which, in my humble opinion, would mean there is someone who is suffering eternal ungoodness on their behalf. Do you see that? So you go on to say he came to conquer evil by his death, and death is the ultimate evil, which is, once again, we have to discuss this because I have a totally different concept of what evil is, and death is not evil to me, based on the concept of evil I have. It's not the nicest thing, not good, but not evil. Now you go on to talk about accountability, because I talk about, in this system, there doesn't seem to be any accountability. Because even if you go and ask forgiveness of somebody, like you say, you have to go and ask forgiveness of the person you wronged, and then you can go and ask God. So even if I did, I went and said, blah blah, I'm really sorry I did that. And they say, up yours, I'm not going to forgive you. Does that then preclude me from going to Jesus and getting forgiveness? Because if it does, then that's a lot of power the unforgiver has to keep me from eternal bliss instead of going to eternal goodness, because I would not be forgiven because that person didn't forgive me. Well, what is that person's dead? I think it all has to do with your mindset, right? Completely, right? It's your mindset. If you turned and you said, I am really sorry, that was stupid of me, whatever it was, and you honestly did, and you turned away from it, the whole turning away from things, and they still did not forgive you, well, the ball's in their court. See you later. Now you can turn to Jesus because your heart is there. And you can be forgiven for that. So in the end, that person who you wronged still does not feel that the accountability was made, because Jesus forgave you. There's no accounting. It's as simple as that. That's the way I look at it. So, you have to be responsible for your own actions, of course. I agree with you. Thank you. But you say that's the whole message of the substitutionary atonement, and it's a 180 from that, sir. The way I look at it, the way I see it, the way I've read about it, the way I understand it, even the way you've described it to me, it's still a 180 from that. So he died so that he could rip away what is evil in us. So once again, the evil thing I really want to discuss. Evil. It's a number of times you bring it up. Well, in the end here, you say that he basically jumps in front of the bullet for you. So what is this bullet? Well, isn't this bullet the wages of sin, death? So why is he still alive then in heaven? This bullet must not be as lethal as advertised, because that bullet was supposed to be, is meant for us, and that bullet is meant for each and every one of us, that eternal ungoodness. Unless we take Jesus and put us, we accept that, him jumping in front of the bullet for us. It ends up being a rubber bullet. I don't know. Even the way you explain it, we got to get together, I guess, Gary. Talk this out, because even the way you explain it, you have some different ideas, interesting ones, but in the end, it's still the same thing to me. There's no accountability. There's no accounting for this thing that God wants accounted for. So, and even humans want accounted for, because I mean, let's face it, a lot of these ideas have been dreamt up by us to right the wrongs of life here, and thinking that, oh, eventually they will be righted, no matter what, how wrong or when it happens, it will be righted, whether here or in the afterlife. The rights will be wronged, and whatever it is, or wrongs will be righted, and all this stuff. But it doesn't even happen that way. We can discuss it. You can change my mind, or persuade me otherwise, if you can. I'll talk to you later. Take care.